illegal drug distribution.
The day I arrived in Detroit, I was shown two bodies that had been placed inside of the trunk of cars at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport. And the stench, the bodies were decomposed and you could see the maggots. And that was my first trip to Detroit. And it was one of the most devastating experiences I ever experienced.
67 is as if it was biblical, as if someone blew out the light, my life turned upside down. The armies of addicts, it was like unbelievable. We never recovered. People breaking in our houses, snatching gold.
All the places I had visited, Detroit to me was the most out of control that I had ever experienced.
Between 1965 and 1970, violent crime more than doubled in the United States. Why this happened has never been fully explained, but the confluence of drugs and the breakdown of social control associated with the civil rights movement and the war in Vietnam were certainly key factors. Nowhere was more out of control than Detroit, Michigan, which had suffered the deadliest riot of the 60s and had become the murder capital of the country by 1971.
Of the 10 biggest cities, Detroit has the highest per capita homicide rate. Last month was the worst for killings in the history of Detroit. There were 89 homicides, one for every dot on the map.
In the spring of 1972, the Bureau of Narcotics sent John Sutton to Detroit on a special assignment to infiltrate and bring down the city's largest black heroin dealers.
Some of the intelligence that we were picking up on indicated there was a mafia operating in Detroit, what they call a Black Mafia.
Agent Sutton arrived in Detroit to find a city divided. On the one hand, Detroit had the most thriving black middle class in the country, mostly thanks to the auto industry, and many people were living the good life.
David Ruffin was a genius. That's the summary of where we were at in 1965. There was plenty of work and the bosses were paying.
The community had beautiful homes. Everybody was drinking good whiskey. Everybody was eating good. They were taking trips. And I saw a kind of a black affluence that I had never seen in other cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and places. Everybody was driving a new car, and naturally American-made car. Big Cadillacs, Fleetwood Bromes, Eldorados.
This was the neighborhood to grow up in. A zillion young girls to highlight.
Life was good in those neighborhoods.
Everybody had jobs, and they had their parents in the home.
You ate good. You had 500 different little local eateries that were good. You didn't have to go downtown.
On the other hand, it was a city where entire police precincts were overrun by heroin dealers and stick-up men.
I immediately detected that there was something missing here, that there was a tremendous erosion of the political system and erosion of the police department, erosion of the religious system in the city.
The police was trying to come down hard on, they called them the Big Four. The Big Four, and they was always coming through the neighborhood trying to intimidate the blacks. They'd pull us out, take us to Bel-Air, and put us out there in the water and shoot at us. I was one of them that they put out there and shot at.
I drove over around Livernois and I heard what I thought was firecrackers. This was pre-4th of July, and I was later told that it was the 10th precinct. The two agents who had been previously assigned here had been relocated out of death threats. They had put contracts out for their life. I'd seen the Pruitt-Igoe housing area of St. Louis, the Cabrini Greens, the Robert Taylor in Chicago, the Front in Baltimore. I'd seen the Watts, Nicholson Gardens, the Jordan Down Project, some of the real bad neighborhoods. And even down in Mexico, Tijuana and Calexico, the most fearful part of my life working drugs was here in Detroit. Some of the most violent people that I've met were here in Detroit.
Detroit had few black police officers in the 1950s, so the department had a hard time infiltrating the city's burgeoning drug infrastructure.
That they were having a lot of, and during that time, a lot of problems, and a lot of black guys were in traffic selling heroin.
I was sent here to do a police officer who apparently worked narcotics and had gone into the dope dealing business by the name of Marzette. And he was a kingpin in Detroit.
Henry Marzette was a hometown boy and Korean War veteran when he entered the police academy. Starting off as an undercover narcotics cop under Detective Vincent Persante in the 1950s, Marzette set arrest records working in the Livernois retirement area.
Recruited him out of the police academy, put him in business, big Cadillac, fine wardrobe, and he was like setting records, busting guys.
But soon started playing both sides of the fence and was convicted of corruption in the late 50s.
When he went to prison, he began to work for the Italians as muscle and so forth. But even bigger than that, he made his connection.
I knew him. I ain't like Needham. I knew him. I knew all of them. Marzette and them was into murder and kidnapping and all that.
As a police officer, everything he learned about the drug game, and now he was going to apply it to himself, becoming a godfather.
But even bigger than that, he made his connection.
After a short stint in prison, Marzette came home, determined to take over the streets.
He knew the system, and that's what made him very good. He was the new drug czar from the dark side, and he was the man.
Marzette made his first major move in 1960, when he had 3 young prostitutes lure a major West Side dealer named Mississippi Red to a motel room, where Marzette was waiting with a shotgun.
I was given money as a young man on Washington Boulevard by Henry Marzette, and he gave me money for school, and that's what he said. The money wasn't for me to go and get clever in an Italian knit. He gave me that money, and he said, and I expect for you to go and use this for school and nothing else.
In the summer of 1970, Henry Marzette had decided to take over Detroit's drug business. He called a meeting of the city's top dealers and told them that he had secured a direct Asian source of supply and that he could guarantee 20 pounds a week of pure China white, enough to supply most of the city.
We always had the African Americans involved in the distribution of drugs throughout the inner cities. And in the 70s, it's when the African Americans were becoming more prominent in business. The drug dealers wanted to do the same thing. And it just made business sense from their perspective to cut out the middleman, which would have been the Italian mafia, and go right to the source and import heroin and control the distribution.
With his chief hitman, Jimmy Moody, standing behind him, Marzette proposed that each dealer put up $50,000 in advance and he'd provide the dope and police protection. Not everybody was willing to work for Henry Marzette, though. Angry words soon led to dead bodies on the street, and things quickly got out of control. A war between Marzette's allies, known as the West Side 12, against dealers loyal to the Italian mafia known as the East Side 7 led to 200 dead bodies. Jimmy Moody himself supposedly killed 15 people between Christmas of 1970 and July of 1971. In April of 1972, Henry Marzette died at home from kidney failure. On his deathbed, the head of the state of Michigan's Organized Crime Division, an old colleague of Marzette from his days as a Detroit undercover narcotics cop, showed up and asked him to stop the drug war. Henry Marzette did this by having his chief hitman, Jimmy Moody, killed. Moody was found in the trunk of his Eldorado at Detroit Metropolitan Airport. As the auto industry slowly faded and Motown Records fled to Los Angeles, the economic vacuum was filled by a new spirit, the spirit of crime.
They made me a ward of the state, 10. That's when they came to my mother's house and took me because they said that my mother couldn't control me. Nobody wanted to be my friend unless I gave them something. So then I learned how to be mean and nasty to the ones that always tried to play me for money or food or.
Detroit's industrial base had begun to die by the early 1950s, leaving a pool of unemployed men to populate the streets.
These are not kids. They're men who need jobs for a living. It's estimated that 1/3 of Detroit's inner city workforce is unemployed.
Between 1953 and 60 alone, the East Side lost 71,000 out of 102,000 industrial jobs.
It's just not enough jobs. What are they going to do when they stop the war and bring jazz home and there's no jobs? This is what causes the crime rate to be so high.
Traditionally, Detroit reflects the best or the worst of the nation's economy at any given time. Right now, the unemployment rate here is more than twice what it was 2 years ago, and by all indicators, it is still rising.
Ain't no work, man, that's all. Where people want to pay you for what you're worth, you know. And every man, I think, knows his worth. I know, man. There's nothing else to say. That's it. I need some money.
We had guys working 3 shifts. They were just like they working the 4th. We paid vacation. They worked 8 hours a day. They got paid for overtime. And we had a bunch of law workers.
Mr. Jackson, it's alleged that just 6 years ago you were earning a little better than $3 an hour as an auto production worker. Just how did you come to acquire this home in Southfield and your other business interests, your automobiles?
Well, I think the law states, that you have to file your income. If I tell you that, then you know my secrets, But as long as I file my income, and I think this is what the law states, and I do that.
What he understood was people. He understood that this was Motown. It was an automotive city, that you work 5 days a week and that you should get 2 days off a week. And he understood that that's what people's perception of a job was. And back then, if Chrysler was paying me $300 a week, if I say I'll pay you $600 a week for the same 40 hours of work, he understood that these guys would get that, right? So you'll pay me twice what the plant pays me, and I'll work the same 40 hours. And he just put it and organized in the early days when he was in the retail end of it. He just organized the retail operation just like they were working at the plant. And it really worked. My dad got up at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning every day that I can remember, particularly when he was involved in the underworld.
Detroit's auto plants were microcosms of the city itself, and everything that was happening in the streets was happening on the factory floor. Agent Sutton infiltrated Chrysler's Dodge Main plant to buy drugs from 2 white foremen.
I was introduced to a white informant who worked at Dodge Main, and he wanted to do 2 guys who were selling heroin and cocaine, and they were white males selling dope over at Dodge Main. And I asked him, why did he want to do these guys? And he said something that I found that later came to pass. He indicated that all of the automotive plants are cities within themselves, and that drugs are rampant inside of the plants. Drugs, prostitution, number running, fencing, everything that you can think of existed in the automotive plant. He wanted to immobilize these 2 dope dealers because he believed people selling drugs who worked for the automotive industry would cause the complete destruction of the automotive industry. He stated that cars that were assembled on Mondays and Fridays were lemons, that they were no good because of the drug use. Kind of a different type dope dealer, a white guy, called himself Cowboy Bob, who sold dope in a penthouse over there on the Detroit River. This guy was apparently using his own product because he even indicated that he could hear music and hear ants crawling on leaves and stuff like that, and he could see musical notes in Technicolor. I bought 2 ounces from him the first time, and I double up. And in those instances, what we would do, we would buy a small amount, come back and buy larger amounts. and let them stay out there for a subsequent arrest and seizure.
With Henry Marzette gone, John Sutton's next target was Denard Devil Jackson, a business partner of Courtney Brown Jr.'s father.
Within a day of arriving in Detroit, Marzette died apparently of natural cause, and Devil Jackson had gotten shotgun in the face the night before. There was some indication that the person that killed Devil Jackson was one of the informants that I would be working with.
Devil Jackson, being an old-timer, guy who kind of knew his way around the streets, he sees that for whatever reason, this guy Eddie Jackson's the real thing, and this guy has gone from a nobody in the streets to the man in the streets in like 18 months.
Early 1971, John Classy, Eddie Jackson's supplier, was indicted in federal court and promptly disappeared. But Jackson and Courtney Brown kept their operation going until they made an even bigger connection in New York City.
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
So the plan is simple. Eddie will go out to New York, take his bankroll, take half his crew with him. Devil Jackson will introduce him to Goldfinger, some of the Cubans out there. He'll go back, get back in business.
Sonny, listen, I told you today, I'm still the greatest of all time.
So when Eddie's at the fight, of course, there's an iconic photo taken in the Ebony magazine where the famous picture of Frank Lucas from American Gangster fame when he's in his chinchilla. And also Eddie is photographed by the photographers of Ebony in conjunction with Devil Jackson, a guy named 5-0 Garrett, and his brother Elijah. The day before the fight, Eddie has a happenstance meeting with some members of the Gambino crime family. And, you know, the rest is kind of history. Eddie ends up doing business with the Gambino family for the next 10 years and makes, you know, phenomenal amounts of money.
Eddie Jackson crossed paths with the high-ranking member of the Gambino Mafia family, the largest and most powerful in the country, who told him, quote, "It looks like we're in the same business." And indeed, they were.
After that, I was assigned investigations. I went out and worked on Eddie Jackson.
Once he bought that Rolls Royce and moved to Southfield and tore down the houses and rebuilt the houses, he was the target.
You're under constant surveillance. There have been all kinds of stories about your alleged connections with the underworld drug market. What's your reaction, Mr. Jackson?
Well, as far as the connection, that's 100% false. And as far as the surveillance, I welcome, you understand, anybody who feel like they want to waste their time watching me, you understand, well, then they can.
Eddie Jackson had another Jackson by the name of, I think it was Ernest Jackson, had a street name of Boogie Bear.
I know when I was in the Defenders, I was assigned to represent a guy. His real name was Arnold Wright. Pretty Rick was a pimp is what he really was. And he was from our neighborhood. He was from around Mumford.
On that weekend, the dope dealers had guns like I'd never seen. They had a saying that it's better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. I saw people driving by, black males driving by with guns and, 45 automatics, the old military 1911 type, and they would lock around in the chamber and hold it up and give the power to the people sign. One of the things that was frightening was that the people who were manning these dope houses were addicts, and there was a reputation that, to watch them because they had a tendency to go on the nod, and when they come out of the nod, they would forget what they were doing and they could easily shoot you.
Charlie used to just give me money to sit on his porch to make sure that the police wouldn't hit him. I would keep watch up and down the street. He was selling heroin.
None of Agent Sutton's targets was more dangerous than the infamous hitman Chester Campbell.
The notorious hitman named Chester Campbell saw him initially while buying dope in a dope house. Coyle, I think the street was on Coyle. And when Campbell walked into the room, there was a kind of an eeriness about him. And the guys, they were mobbed. One guy wanted to be like him, talked about he was one of the famous hitmen, the killers, that he earned like $10,000 a hit. In that particular case, the informant ended up being killed.
I met Chester Campbell once in my life, and I went to see him in the county jail. In the county jail, the old county is really small. When you looked at him, you're looking at him like I'm looking at you, and you don't see nothing. You just look, those eyes. It was He was, and he was very, very smart.
But in that case, the informant ended up dead and his body was identified. He had been eaten by the field rats. And he was identified by a thumbprint that had not been devoured by the field rats. I suspected that Chester killed this person while I was inside of his house buying dope, and the guy suspected that I was a police. He called the informant into the room and he wanted me to front the money. I wouldn't front it. And he had a little girlfriend, a little attractive, light complexion female. And when I told him he was in the police finding business, that we would go and spend our money where they were selling dope. And we left, and as we were leaving and going back to the undercover car, the young lady ran out and said that she would cop the dope for us. A blue Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham pulled up in front of a house. It was her mother's house, and we were sitting on the front porch. A guy on the passenger seat had what appeared to be a Thompson machine gun. He brandished it like that and looked at me and the informant. And then they drove away. About 20 minutes later, she came back driving that Cadillac. She indicated that this was a connect. And if he thought I was the police, he was going to spray us right there with that gun. He was going to kill us there on the spot.
When Chester Campbell was arrested in 1975 after running a police car off the road, authorities found 4 loaded guns in his car, along with notebooks containing 300 names, including those of murder victims, dead police informants, and politicians, along with diagrams of their homes and notes about their daily routines.
But back in '72, I think we put away a large number of those dope dealers. And I think had we not put them away at that time, this city would have been completely destroyed by the dopers and the murders that were taking place.
As Henry Marzette lay dying in his hospital bed, Detroit's economy was slipping away along with him, and the young people of the city began to look toward the street instead of the factory floor for their daily bread.
At the end of '73, me and my friend, we started selling a little weed. Child started wanting us to push a little Heroin for him, so he give us 10 packs. We'd take the 10 packs and go out there and sell them. Then we go back, give him the $90, we kept 10. We see that we was taking him all the money, so we said, man, maybe we need to start getting our own shit and start doing it. Because my friend said, well, ain't he gonna get mad? Get mad all he want. He said, man, but he's supposed to be our friend. I said, yeah, well, he our friend, but he also not paying us much. Every day I was coming home with new clothes. My mama all like, where we get them clothes from?
By the mid-'70s, street gangs were coming to power in LA, Chicago, and New York. In Detroit, gangs like the Bishops, Black Killers, and Errol Flynn's terrorized the East Side.
They run in with Flynn, 2 Flynns. We beat the shit out of them.
Detroit has had black gangs for years, but until recently, they spent most of their time fighting each other. Now they have banded together and are staging mass attacks. They stopped a rock concert at downtown Cobo Hall last weekend. There were beatings and robberies, 1 woman raped, 47 youths arrested. Alarmed city officials recalled earlier than scheduled 450 policemen who had been laid off for economy reasons. They will be concentrated in the downtown areas.
You know, gangs had died. Used to be Errol Flynn's, Bishops, Shane Gang, all that's East Side. West Side was FAs, that's the them Finkel Avenue boys, PAs, 8 Mile Scones.
They used to always come through there shooting. BK was shooting at the Errol Flynn's, and then Errol Flynn would ride back over there and shoot up the BK.
This quiet-looking street is the dividing line between the city's 2 largest gangs, the Black Killers and the Errol Flynn's. Youths blame the gang violence on unemployment.
They're getting misled by, older adults, like, these people that be around, ain't got no job, walking around, committing a lot of crime. That's where they're getting it from.
Officials say at present a juvenile is arrested at 10 in the morning, is released at 3 in the afternoon, and comes back a hero to the other gang members.
So we never really claimed that gang kind of bullshit. We just would stump a motherfucker from the police or whoever.
They was doing some weed, selling weed and heroin, little heroin. They wasn't doing no big time stuff, but they was trying to move up, but because they were shooting at each other, they couldn't move. They couldn't gain foothold, so everybody else that was doing it was moving up.
The kids, the young guys who were in the Flynns and all that, Well, poor kids who most of the time didn't have no money.
Cobo Hall, Parliament Funkadelic Flashlight Concert. You know what I'm saying? They get ready to land the mothership. About 8 of us, we glass heeled up with them motherfucking Lou Miles suits on. 30 motherfuckers surround us. Bossolinis, baggy ass pants. They had us outnumbered. We was gonna buck. They gave us a pass. You know, we like, shh. Then they running up and down the hall how we knew who they was with the Errol Flynn.
The auto jobs everyone had moved up to Detroit for were rapidly disappearing. But the children of Detroit had grown up in the shadow of the world's largest corporations and were ready to graduate from petty crime to the world of big-time drug dealing.
What's up? I'm B. Skeeter. Original YBI, 1977. Before the snitching and the bitching. I grew up on Yosemite and Elmhurst, but I lived on Martindale and Elmhurst. That's where it all began. That's where YBI started. Just a bunch of young motherfuckers like the Little Rascals, you know what I'm saying? We was like all brothers. All our mothers loved each other and loved all of us.
In July of '75, the corner of Finkel and Livernois, a solid working-class neighborhood in northwest Detroit, was the site of a mini riot that laid bare Detroit's unholy trinity of crime, race, and class.
Last night's unrest was touched off by the fatal shooting of 18-year-old Obi Wynn, a black, by a white tavern owner who accused the youth of trying to steal his car. An angry crowd of several hundred residents responded with a rock-throwing, window-smashing, burning spree through the predominantly black business district of northwest Detroit, despite efforts by Mayor Coleman Young and police officials to restore calm. Detroit, already in the grips of a devastating economic recession, was ripe for violence. Unemployment approaches 25%, more than 125,000 workers. The bar and Andrew Chinarian, the bar owner, now accused of second-degree murder, are both controversial. According to area residents, Chinarian allegedly maintained a white-only policy at the bar.
This is a white honky bar. Peckerwood bar.
Why do you say that?
Because the man, he got a buzzer on there. If you can come down and you see that you're black, you do not get in.
I was the only one along here that had nice windows, you know, without being bricked up. And I liked it that way because I took pride in the way the things were kept. But how are you going to have pride in something like this?
While some people with legitimate concern showed anger, frustration at the demonstration in front of that bar, other hoodlums and rip-off artists were taking advantage of the situation and ripping off the area between 7 Mile and St. Martin's, for instance, on Livernois and other areas. That will not be tolerated.
One of the men charged in killing the Polish immigrant was a charismatic 20-year-old from the Dexter and Martindale neighborhood on the west side named Raymond Peoples.
Raymond come up out of it.
He was acquitted, but you also know that people were disappearing and didn't come to court.
We already was doing a little something, but out of the love for Raymond, they slid him right in. He had the gift of gab, he had the respect, everybody loved him, right on top.
We had never seen anything like YBI. We had never seen a kid that young, that reserved, that articulate, that smart.
We call this the red zone. From Davidson to Joy Road, Livernois, Dexter, red zone. And we held this down. You can't slang shit around here. We started eliminating all these old motherfuckers sitting up behind the door slanging shit, right? Get the fuck on. Martindale and Elmhurst, Dexter and Dwayne, Dexter and Tuxedo. It was the runners. Sally from the valley, you know, the big hands and all that, big man, Bobby and Fatty. If a motherfucker would ask them, damn, who got it? Them young boys got it, because we was all little kids.
When the addicts on Dexter began calling them the Young Boys, they decided to stamp their heroin packets with that name.
We stamped that shit Young Boys Incorporated, not YBI, in cursive. Young Boys Inc.
Once the police and newspapers found out about it, the name stuck, and Young Boys fever spread across the city.
We had spots on Calvert and motherfucking 12th, Highland Park, that we tore in half. We got a lot of crew out of Highland Park once they seen our mentality. Prairie and Joy Road was our first spot. We took that bitch. Mac and Gray, or Mac and B Wick.
Only in Detroit, hometown of 3 of the world's largest corporations, could a group of teenage drug kingpins call themselves incorporated.
And when I came back in '79, I saw a city that rotten into the core.
Around this time, Nathaniel Boone Craft joined the Army Special Forces, where he received the training he'd later put to use as a hitman in the streets of Detroit.
They say Vietnam was over, but yet they still fighting over there undercover. On the down low, they send somebody in to do something. Hey, we was paid to do this, and I did it. We basically, like I said, the Army wouldn't talk much about me, and most of us that did come home, they wasn't expecting us to do what we did.
July 1979. 3 bodies with their heads chopped off are found in a van near John R, just south of Erskine.
They had several beheadings. They had one guy had a street named Doc Holliday, and one guy, street name, I think his name was Frank Usher, Frank Nitty. And they decapitated three people.
Frank Nitty Usher, suspected by the Detroit police of being the city's largest heroin dealer, is quickly charged with ordering the murders. Notorious hitmen and drug dealers James Red Freeman and Adolph Doc Holliday Powell are charged along with Nitty and Robert Partee.
The notoriety of the case came because their heads were cut off and the bodies were found, and of course, if it had just been 3 dead people, they'd have said, oh, there's 3 dead people. But when you cut somebody's heads off, then of course it became the crime of the century. Usher was convicted as being an aider and abettor. Nobody claimed he shot the people. And he was basically there. They were all there. So he was convicted. He was doing a mandatory life sentence. His people came to me. The prosecutor's theory was that Partee and Red Freeman killed the people. I mean, they were supposed to be the killers. They were, according to the prosecutor's theory. And the jury convicted Partee, and he's doing life. Another jury acquitted Red Freeman, and he's doing life on another case now.
Steve Fishman helped Usher get his conviction overturned in the late 1980s.
So I got him a new trial. I think that the evidence showed that he was a target. I think it showed that somebody was trying to have him done, probably Doc Holliday, who's now dead, and that Frank, either by force of personality, quick talking, or luck, got to the sideline rather than be one of the victims. Frank Usher is one of the easiest clients I've ever dealt with. I'm still friendly with him to this day. He's been out many, many years. And I had a drink with him 3 months ago. He's a gentleman. If you didn't know he was Frank Nitty, if people didn't say, oh, Frank Nitty, and you saw him at a ball game or in a bar, he doesn't curse, he doesn't smoke.
I never saw that in other cities. I never saw bodies put in the trunk of cars and left to rot. I never saw little kids, preteens, shot in the back of their heads by dope dealers.
A lady hired my brother to do something to a numbers man. My brother wound up getting in touch with me. We go to do it. I wind up going to prison for it, but it was a number man that we had to put the frighten of God in him. So you know he must pay.
The corner of John R and Erskine had been a known drug hotspot since the 1950s, and in 1978, YBI General Dwayne Davis sent his soldiers down on John R to set up shop.
Yeah, we right here on John R and Erskine. Man, there was so many motherfucking bags up in here. I was the first out of us YBI to come downtown. I came down here working for Raymond Wayne and Bone Man. We had pink coin envelopes with China White stamped on it. And there was a building right here, the old man that sold liquor after hours. I rolled on this corner, hid my dope in the vacant lot. Motherfuckers getting laid out, 2 to the head, broad daylight. Motherfuckers ODing in the alley. Scam moves, snatch the shit, snatching money, armed robberies, murder. Downtown Detroit is where motherfuckers come from all over Michigan to get dope. Whether it be the Brewsters, John R and Erskine, Cass Corridor to the Jeffrey Project. White, I wouldn't care what, this is dope central. It led me to realize this shit is bigger than YBI.
Carl Taylor was running a private security company at Cobo Hall and Joe Louis Arena in downtown Detroit when he first crossed paths with YBI.
And one of our guys that was working the doors said, man, this group just came to the side door and they got all these little young guys. And I'm like, well, who is that? And we kept, so thought, well, maybe they were breakdancing or whatever. So we get back and I got my lieutenants and everybody looking and they get out and they look at you with a very brazen look. They got out all like little men, and the girls were going crazy. Some of the guys were very, good-looking little guys. They had neat haircuts. They had the Adidas identical suits, and so I really was just. And we had about 15 of them, and they had them in the room, and they were making them empty their pockets. And right then, you knew you had something different, because they were one spokesperson. And he said, "Why are we emptying our pockets? What have we done? Are we under arrest?" Asking questions as seasoned, and they had these bicycle chains. Yo, man, that shit is real. They would be checking you. And then one had that map of America. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And I got to see the map maybe 9 months later. And it had a few diamonds, and 9 months later, it had more diamonds. And someone was explaining that was where they made distribution or where they did business. And I couldn't believe it. And then the cops, they got rough with the kids, which would normally scare the cahoots out of regular gang. You giving us our shit back, or we're calling our attorney.
There was a Midtown hotel up on Woodward in Mac. That's where I used to keep my big stash. And they watching me, so I'm nervous than a motherfucker. We was selling 100 bundles or better every day. A car pull up, them peeped my stash, ran, but that China white pink pack was so good he came back the next day talking about give me 2. I fired on that motherfucker with a short motherfucking right, dropped him. Bougie stomping him with them motherfucking cousin glass heels, you know what I'm saying? Here come Raymond, Wayne, Bushrod. Bitch, we the motherfucking boys. Dexter, YBI.
We were over on Dexter at Esquire's, the corned beef place, which was legendary. And suddenly this Corvette drove up. 2 young girls got out, and this was in the summer, like in August, and had mink jackets on, little Venuses. They were just gorgeous. And then a Mercedes drove up right behind us and a BMW. And that was the first time we got to see the whole crew. And the kid who went in to get our sandwiches came back and had screwed up all our orders. All he wanted to say was, YBI was in there with their girls. And that's when you knew at that moment that this was something like we had never seen before.
7 o'clock on a warm evening in March, and you are riding in a caravan of unmarked police cars about to raid what they call a major distribution outlet of heroin in the Brewster housing project. Police tell me some of the heroin would be sold to other drug dealers in the project, and some would be given to kids to sell on the street. The place, police say, is a suspected dope house in the Young Boys Incorporated network.
And the thrill of being on top, stepping in somewhere and everybody know your name.
They were legendary at that very moment.
Before rap hit, we was entertainers in the hood.
But them boys would start pulling up in them big ass cars and wearing all that jewelry.
From there on out, that neighborhood, which usually responded to the Temptations and the celebrity life, YBI was the shit.
Before the first indictment of Young Boys, Detroit was second only to New York for the consumption of heroin. And they literally took over. That was the precursor for street sales in the United States. It originated here in Detroit.
Intrigued by this new type of youth gang, Taylor kept seeing them at events in Detroit and all around the country, including the Tommy Hearns Sugar Ray Leonard Championship fight of 1981, for which Taylor ran security for the Tommy Hearns camp.
From Detroit, Michigan, he is the WBA welterweight champion of the world, undefeated in his professional career, introducing Thomas, the Motor City Cobra, Hearns.
I was Hearns' bodyguard, ran his security when he fought Leonard the first time. And YBI came out, and members of the whole entourage, and came to the fight. They went to the fight as if they were going to Cobo Arena. Who else could fly out to Vegas and stay in Caesar's Palace with us? Not only did the fellas didn't talk, you didn't want to be asking them stuff. I mean, you could end up dead asking the wrong things. As a matter of fact, if I followed the social science method of gathering information, I wouldn't have anything. I speak the language and respect the rules in the underworld and the underground.
Growing up in the infamous Jeffries Projects near downtown Detroit, RD was exposed to the drug game at an early age.
We in the Jeffrey Projects, you know what used to be the Jeffrey Projects. This is where I'm from. This is where it began for me. Before they got us up out of here, every day for us was the hustle. You know what I mean? Get paid $50 a day, stand right here on 4th at the fire hydrant and yell hook down. You know what I mean? Because the big guys was out there selling the packs.
The Jeffries soon became a YBI stronghold, with young dealers leaping on the hoods of passing cars in a frenzy to sell their wares. And in one 3-day stretch of winter 1980, 18 people were shot near the corner of Selden and Gibson.
Yeah, they was selling heroin. You know, and they can't watch out for the hook and try to serve the customers. So they'd be like, little brother, here, take this $50, stand over there, and when you see the hook, just yell.
R.D.'s parents might have thought they made it out when his father got a job working for the Big Three and the family moved out of the Jeffries and onto the near west side.
They got a job at the plant and they moved over on Stokely and Davidson. Well, it looked it better because the neighborhood, man, was laid out. It looked like we moved to the motherfucking suburbs coming out the jets, you know what I'm saying? But when you got over there and I got to socializing with them guys over there, them guys was like Martians.
I've always been a Martian on this motherfucker. I'm on Earth, but I'm not one of you motherfuckers.
You know what I mean? Nobody want to talk to them guys. I had to run down to the projects every day because I couldn't deal with them cats.
I don't give a fuck about you and that bench and the jury, your punk-ass car, none of that. Nigga, I'm from Dexter. I'm YB motherfucking I.
They kept approaching me with the money. I'm down here making $50, yelling police, as opposed to them guys over there. They gonna give us $100 a day. Whereby us being young, we don't know no better. You know what I'm saying? $100 a day is great when you're a little guy. Just think what you can do with $100. $100, man, you can go get some gym shoes, an outfit. You wanted what they had, man, and they were smooth about it. Give you a few dollars. Huh, man, come around there and see me tomorrow or something. Everybody be making them out to be monsters and all that shit, man. Them guys wasn't like that, man. Them guys they were smooth, man.
B took his first arrest while working for Raymond Peoples near Dexter Avenue.
I'm in a joint on Calvert and Dexter. I'm getting $100 a week in all the tops I can get. Damn, here they come. I run back, I flush the packs I got, and you selling dope. You selling dope for Raymond Peoples. They beat my ass a couple hours. 1,300 broken. Typewriters broke, desks broke, chairs broke from where they've been whooping mother.
Okay, we're here on the corner of Selden and Gibson. And back circa 1980, 81 or so, in the wintertime like we are now, there were 22 shootings in just a period of about 2 weeks, just right on this intersection. And why was that? Well, today there's new developments around here. This has all gone up. New casino down the street, but this was the infamous Jeffries public housing project. Been torn down and replaced. But back then, it was one of Detroit's most valuable drug properties, and YBI and Pony Down and others were shooting each other over who got to sell. They were shooting customers if they bought from the wrong people, and Doc Davis and his brothers were supplying both Pony Down and YBI.
Arrest 16 people all at one time over in the Jeffries projects. 15 minutes after we take them downtown, there's another 25 or 30 runners out there dealing dope. That doesn't sound like we're winning to me.
And one of those that was shot was one of my cousins, Larry Rebels, was shot in the phone booth right over here, about a block over. He got shot here with a shotgun, but he lived. Beefing with some of the guys in the Jeffrey projects.
What was Larry doing? Was he selling food?
No, Larry was one of my goons. And he you know, he was looking for somebody that owed money over in this area, and they caught him. They got him before he got to them, and he shot him up with a shotgun in the phone booth while he was on the phone talking to me.
Now, you were never convicted in any of your cases of any violence, correct?
No, absolutely not.
But, and we're going to practice the fine art of saying less, but to maneuver in the streets of America's most dangerous cities, let's just say the Davis family could be very dangerous if need be.
That's right. Strongholds for the drugs during that time, besides John Iron Erskine and Dexter and other places, that the YBI and the Pony was involved in.
How much a day would come out of just a place like this?
It's about the same thing, about 100,000 a day with all the different groups that would be down here.
You know, just come and post up like anybody else.
And you wouldn't be the only guys out on the block.
No, we wouldn't be the only ones out here posted up.
And It was what, best bag wins? The customers bought what they wanted?
You know, yeah, pretty much.
Whoever had the best drugs ruled. And we were supplying YBI and Pony. Yeah, well, we would mix the stuff out of Amsterdam, which is number 3, the stuff out of Bangkok, which is number 4. You know,
number 4 means more highly refined.
Number 4 is the best it comes. It's 97.4 pure. Number 4. They call it number 4. It comes from the Golden Triangle. Then you got number 3 that comes from Turkey and Pakistan and them areas around there, which is more crude.
2 in the afternoon at Woodrow Wilson and Cortlandt on Detroit's west side. Watch the teenager in the blue jacket as he approaches the car, throws a signal by holding up 2 fingers, and finally waves the car in. A moment later, a second youngster approaches the car and apparently makes a delivery. The car drives away, and the teenager in the blue jacket passes the money he's received to the runner who made the delivery.
We would mix the 2. And once you mix your 2, you'll have something with a strong hit, which would be the number 3, and the high and the whole would be number 4. So once you had that, you would lock the city down. See, a lot of guys didn't have the capacity to go overseas and get dope like from Amsterdam, Turkey through Amsterdam and Bangkok. And they didn't have the connections like that. It wasn't too many that had connections. I had in 4 different parts of the world, 4 continents. 1 key of the number 3, 1 key of the number 4, mix it together. And then we would give 1 key to a week to the ponies and 1 key a week to the YBI.
What would this block a bit look like on a day like this back in '82? Full of young guys or?
No, just everyday thing that's going on. You know, guys be talking about how they run to cars. We've been running the cars.
Now we're at Joy Road in Petoskey, another well-known center of heroin trafficking back on the west side, and this time it's high noon. Young people and teenagers are out on the streets stopping cars, apparently making sales right under our nose, and hollering out what police say are brand names of heroin like Whipcracker.
So let me ask you this. At the time YBI and Pony Down were going and all this violence was going on, you had young children, and did you ever think about, at the same time you had young kids are on these corners selling drugs, how does someone at your level at that time of the drug game reconcile those things? Is it something you don't think about or what?
No, at that time, I wouldn't focus on that, and I regret that because I wouldn't want my children to be strung out on drugs.
Or selling them.
Or selling them. That's why I kept them from that. And I'm not proud of that. It's something that you know, I really regret.
At the time.
But at the time, I was so consumed in the lifestyle and the money, I didn't think about the psychological part and the part where it would affect how it affected people, how it affected young people.
My position, if it was whatever I had to play at that time.
Could have been
you know
picking
what I mean?
up and dropping off.
It could have been picking up, dropping off, standing on the block, kicking your ass. You know what I mean? It could have been all different types of things. You know, but.
Beyond the money and the violence, the rise of YBI marked a new era in Detroit, an era in which drug dealers and drug dealing became pillars of the economy and the community.
People in the community knew what was going on, man. It wasn't like now. See, now motherfuckers disrespectful, shooting and doing all that stupid shit. Back then, wherever we hustled at, we kept the block clean, we kept the grass cut, we cleaned the fields. It wasn't no chaos, wasn't nobody getting robbed, and nobody messed with the neighbors.
As the gang broke into separate crews, B left Raymond Peoples and went with Dwayne W.W. Davis and was soon making more money than he could spend as Davis's right-hand man.
Wayne come over and we talked, took me shopping, all kind of shit. I want you to get on with me. I said, shit, we on.
And Wayne was that guy. He was wearing dark suits, carrying the Italian handbag. So he would tease with me. He says, yo man, what it take for you to be my guy? I'm like, you know, you gotta be kidding. Laughing, yeah, right. I have clients, which I did. I was Yul Brynner's bodyguard and others.
Wayne just had gave everything to me. Wayne trying to step out of the game. Wayne had changed his mannerism of dress, speech, wearing this goddamn Jerry curl shit. I ain't understanding, but he's getting into a whole new crowd of people. You know what I'm saying? These square motherfuckers with that clean dollar. They got a house, man, with a swimming pool in the back. We got Benzes in the driveway, whatever. You know, whatever, everything what you would think. But all our neighbors is Jews, Chaldeans or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They like, damn, they stay in they motherfucking window.
But I have to tell you, he was driving the Mercedes. I was driving the Mercedes. Mine came with hard-earned money. And I think, honestly, I probably was a little jealous.
I got 4 or 5 houses in the suburbs. I got every kind of car that you can imagine, you know. So now at this time, I'm really looking at like the government.
I had never even met Bush. I always done heard about him. Bush this, Bush that. But I detect a little animosity. I detect a little fear in motherfuckers that knowed him and a lot of motherfuckers who didn't want him coming off into our thing, you know what I'm saying? But let me go back to the time when Butch dropping me and Mark off with 300 bundles going to Highland Park. Young B and Mark, I know y'all with Wayne, man, but I want to spit something at y'all. I'm going to take this motherfucking city over. I need y'all to get down with me.
Butch soon wanted to take over things for himself, and his crew of enforcers, known as the Wrecking Crew or the A-Team, were the most feared gunmen in early 80s Detroit.
Been a lot of occasions, man, different occasions where guys tried to come, you know, tell us we couldn't roll here, we couldn't roll there, you know what I mean? But that wasn't no shit we worried about. We handled the problem right then. We handled it ourselves. Wrecking Crew, all them guys would come later if we couldn't handle it. For the most part, you gotta be able to handle it yourself or you ain't gonna be able to get out. You couldn't hold it, ain't no sense in you being out there.
The Young Boys first hit the newspaper in 1979 when the Detroit police found out about a free heroin giveaway they were conducting on the west side.
We had a great dope giveaway. We passing out cars all through the neighborhood, everywhere. Dwayne and Dexter, the great dope giveaway. 70,000 a day, one spot. Hamilton and Highland, we got the whole building. Boom!
YBI truly marked the decline and demise of authority, period. They are not scared of the police. A landmark to me as a researcher that this was a pivotal turn in attitudes about young black men in the world. I mean, I love The Wire, but I'm like, these Detroit boys have been doing this.
When Mayor Young was in office, I remember he had made a speech and he was like, yeah, black man, get your money, but he was meaning it toward black store owners and black businesses.
I think at that time they had seen a complete erosion of the law enforcement in the city, and there's no doubt that law enforcement in Detroit at that time from the local level they were inept.
Young boys on a corner, a motion of poetry that was deadly.
And they had no control over it.
And this whole concept of using two things that people didn't use before, which was young kids that were juveniles and taxi cabs.
Man, we got away with a lot of shit because we was young. You know what I'm saying? They didn't really have no laws for the young kid. They catch us, man, with 50 bundles, man, about 16,000. Little young motherfucker, where you get that from? Bam, who you roll for? I don't know what you talking about. What they gonna do? Nothing. You know, if you didn't have a murder case, you wasn't going to jail.
Butch Jones, who was probably the most famous young boy of all, was one of the conduits from the suppliers to the streets. And he got a relatively short plea bargain agreement in the first YBI indictment.
But the parts where they get to talking about lieutenants and captains, that only can come from one person. Which is, you know, hey man, we'll talk about it later on.
Young adults, they were hell-bent toward trafficking drugs, earning money quickly.
We were selling shit $5 a pack. We the first motherfuckers to come out with $5 packs of mixed jab. Uno all day, every day.
No, they didn't want to do like their parents did. They didn't want to go into the automotive industry. Many of them did not want to go to school to get an education.
Bush them had the bomb, Hoochie Khan. Raymond them had Rolls Royce. Bone Man had so-and-so. Pontiac, Southwest, Downtown, Hamtramck, North End. North End a bad motherfucker. Man, we was everywhere. We was everywhere. You name it, we was pushing packs.
Not since the Great Depression of the 1930s have so many people lined up for a free lunch at the Capuchin Brothers Soup Kitchen in Detroit. These are among the most desperate victims of the recession in Michigan. It began when dealers couldn't sell Detroit's cars. Auto plants closed. Thousands were laid off.
If there was more jobs out there, we could get up and get off this welfare.
Some people are getting out, like Pearlie McPherson. She, her husband, and their 3 children moved here from Mississippi, but he couldn't find a job. So the other night, they loaded a trailer and moved back to Mississippi. Detroit's Renaissance Center, the towering symbol of the city's economic recovery, has been losing tenants. Shops have closed. The center has lost more than $100 million.
When Coleman Young said the problem in Detroit is there's no more Dodge Main, everybody poo-pooed it because, you know, all the white people said it was always about race with him. But that was the most accurate thing, I think, that summarizes the situation in the city today.
The easy come, easy go theory is all over with, if you're related to the automotive industry in any way right now.
But when I came back in '79, one of the saddest scenes I recall seeing was I had bought dope at Dodge Main in Hamtramck, and seeing them close down what they call Dodge Main in Hamtramck, and there was a black male in the Detroit Free Press. They showed his picture, and they showed an article saying that he had worked for Dodge for 27 years, and he was.
The crime rate is rising again. So is drug and alcohol abuse.
81, I had shot a guy on Cascade, man, and he was testifying on me, you know what I mean? So I'm at the 10th precinct, waiting to pay my bond after my print's clear. They bring 2 dope fiends in there. They're in the cell next to me. Damn, man, them niggas blow WW head off. I get home, my mama standing in the door crying. You know, I said, yeah. When I get over to Cascade, everybody standing around, tears fall, saying I love that brother, man. I miss him. He didn't deserve that.
Bruiser, my nephew, he was down with the YBIs, Young Boys Incorporated. They would do things out in broad daylight and everybody see it. You don't do anything where everybody witness you shooting down somebody. That was their downfall. Everybody knew who was doing the killing. Sure enough, they went down. Then he broke away and started his own crew, 2020 Boys.
A motherfucker get his season, and it wear out for you.
In Detroit, big money in the pockets of small boys has the attention of federal investigators.
Tell us what was going through your head when you were taken into that courtroom. And of course, as we're going to get into, you know, the way the newspaper article is written is that I guess you were supposedly or somebody threatening the judge and they had to take you in the basement, but and there was a letter supposedly written by you threatening the mayor, but at the time you couldn't read or write, correct?
No, I couldn't read or write.
So what was going on in your mind when this was happening?
Well, basically it was like, why was they targeting me? So I'm just trying to figure out what was really going on.
And you were what age at this time?
I was 17, just turned 18.
So all this mythology about you that supposedly did or didn't happen at all was just in a space of what, you being 13 to 18 or something?
It wasn't about 2-3 years, if that.
It's really not even possible for all the things attributed to you to even have happened in that shorter period of time,
To
right?
make me public enemy #1. Little guy named Kendrick was a rat long time ago. So if he was a rat long time ago, why would I want to do something to him? He wasn't nobody. He was just a guy that was out here just like everybody else, you know, trying to be in the streets. And when it came down to it, he told. You know, he lied and told, which that's what a lot of people's doing now. They lying and telling. That was on the east side.
Oh, was that Joseph Brown?
Yeah.
So that's a case where you were telling me that the police fed
one of their witnesses to say it was my name.
So he supposedly made a deathbed, he's coughing and he's dying, and he says...
And the police told him to say...
Mohawk did it.
Yeah.
So
Mohawk.
again, they're trying to... And that wasn't even his name.
No, it wasn't even his name.
Yeah, it wasn't even the right nickname. Because when I read that, I was like, well, wait a second, that's not even the right nickname, so how would he have said that?
Right.
That's like the police were getting
so
intel that wasn't right.
Once I found out that it was them polices over there, I knew then it was something else behind it.
It wasn't really even an attempted murder. He got shot.
In the butt.
Right here on St. Antoine.
Yeah. He said I chased him down the street and everything, but, you know, I ain't do none of that.
Started a case and ended up being the YBI Young Boys Inc. case. He ended up indicting that case along with a group. Within that Young Boys Inc., they had a group called the Pony Down. They had certain little crews that were dealing dope.
I can't really say. I suppose that when I first got to be more well-known was when I started representing a lot of those guys from the Pony Down gang, which is Leroy Buttram was supposedly the head of it.
Dwayne Davis's old crew was spared the indictment, probably due to Davis's death.
If Wayne hadn't got killed, we possibly would have got indicted.
The New York Times reported today that authorities are trying to crack drug rings, paying the boys thousands of dollars to work as runners, distributing heroin to addicts. One 11-year-old was arrested with $2,000 in his pockets. And one auto dealer said a 15-year-old bought a Mercedes-Benz recently.
I believe what happened, and I don't know, because I wasn't working for the government, but I think with respect to YBI and Pony Down, I think it got to a point where not enough of these guys were going to jail. We were winning. I mean, Otis Culpepper was representing the YBI guys, and he was winning. Anytime they'd get they thought was a good case in state court, I would win. Same thing here. They'd bring a homicide charge, I'd win.
You can't talk about all those other Chamber Brothers or nobody. YBI is the organization that made selling drugs, made it hip, and made killing people okay.
1985, Sturtevant Street near Dexter Avenue. Ray Peoples, recently paroled from federal prison and already having survived being shot on East Philadelphia and Monica and Puritan, is killed while sitting in a car.
YBI would never stop till the casket drop. You know what I'm saying? Because there's always a motherfucker trying to immolate us. And that's the aftermath of what these niggas out here doing now. And a motherfucker can't tell you no different. He's an offspring. Whether I done stuck my dick in his mammy or not, he's one of my sons. Because you're doing shit I used to do. And you're trying real hard at it, but it can never, ever be done again.
No arrest is ever made in the murder of Raymond Peoples, and the YBI era comes to an end with Butch Jones in prison and Ray Peoples joining Dwayne Davis in death. But Detroit had been changed forever.
YBI was it, and it hit.
Cocaine had become an acceptable drug, but the explosion, the real explosion, occurred when crack cocaine. And they called it freebase, whatever they wanted to call it.
So you had to have money to get high. Wasn't no motherfucker bamming on your door with $5. But no, this nigga came in on the freebase and spent $150 and blew his brains off, heard them bells. You know what I'm saying? Like Nita Ward said, ring my motherfucking bell.
Young dealers can make up to $800 a day, possess an arsenal of weapons, and readily kill to protect their turf and profits. The smallest confrontation can become a matter of life and death.
Whenever police raid a crack house, they say they're also bound to find some heavy firepower. Drugs and guns are a deadly mixture, and together they've given Detroit the highest murder rate of any American city.
This is a war. This is an epidemic. I've been to Vietnam, but this is a war right here. This is our Vietnam.
Well, the cocaine was there, but it just really got real popular.
This summer has been especially violent, with more than 500 shootings reported in 2 months. FBI figures show Detroit with 61 murders for every 100,000 citizens last year. Gary, Indiana was second, and other major cities ran far behind.
It didn't get really wild until 84, 85, and 86.
Detroit police say they see this less as a crime problem than as a drug problem. Thousands of people, jobless and hopeless, look for a way out and find trouble instead.
In the aftermath of the YBI and Pony Down indictments, the hundreds of young workers they'd employed graduated to running their own operations, many of them taking their show on the road, and dealers from Detroit started getting arrested all around the country.
The little 40,000 we make here a day, we can go out of town and make 80,000. Man, we was going to St. Louis, man, Alabama, Cleveland, knocking their heads off. Yeah, well, it was easy to go out of town and get it because of the mannerism and the way we was brought up here. As opposed to going out of town, them guys ain't got nothing, they slow. And we go down there and tear their heads up and come home and spend the wealth.
Flint, Michigan is a short ride up the I-75 freeway from Detroit and the center of General Motors car production.
You know, we took that YBI thing straight to Flint, because they ain't know no better. Because we was still using a lot of them old stamps that they left. Them guys was going to work, man. We just had to wait till Friday to really roll up there. You know what I'm saying? Because they worked all week and got hot in the motherfucker on the weekend. But man, after we stayed in that motherfucker for 3 months, motherfuckers started quitting, getting fired from the plants, man. And then this shit The shit just turned into an epidemic where motherfuckers was getting money every day.
Toledo was the first stop. Then we went down to Lima, then we spread it out even farther. We pulled right on in and started doing business, break it off, and so forth.
In every state across the United States, man, you got a set of Detroit guys set up in their town. You understand what I'm saying? And I learned this from being in the Fed joint in every state, man. I got 188 months. I did 10 years, man, for them suckers, man.
The Young Boys Inc. and those that followed after didn't make the streets fill up with drugs. They were just there at the right time to profit off the average citizen's desire to get high. And that's why no sooner than the police sent a so-called Kingpin off to prison, another rose up to take his place.
Demetrius Holloway walked in my office in 85. He walked in, I was still in the Lafayette building. He said he had a Fed case, felon in possession. And he had just got out of prison. Came in and he said, look, I'm going to try this case. I've got a defense, which he did. I don't have any money, hardly. You know, I've got, some $500, whatever it was he had. But my word's good. He says, you tell me the fee. It'll take me some time, but I'll pay the fee. And he was, at the time, literally had just gotten out of jail on federal parole. And there was something about the guy I thought he was telling the truth. And it was a tribal case, and I'm a sucker for trials. And I said, okay, we got a deal. And we tried the case. And he was found not guilty. Demetrius Holloway, had he wanted to be, could have been a CEO of a major corporation. He never drank. He never smoked. He laughed at people who used drugs. He was smart as hell. And he was cunning. And he was a leader. He was a big, big whale, is what the cops used to call him. Demetrius Holloway and Rick Carter, even though they were friends, were as different as two human beings could ever be. Anybody in the streets will tell you that.
Soon after getting out of prison, Boone crossed paths with Maserati Rick in an East Side pizza parlor. After one of Rick's underlings started an argument with him, Boone flashed his gun, and Maserati stepped in to defuse the situation.
He said, man, Dennis, man, we could work together if you just give me time to speak with you. We went and got into his Benz. We talked, he was telling me about himself, about what he do and so forth. He said, you might have heard me, they call me Maserati.
Rick was cheap and petty. I mean, he was all right to deal with, but he wasn't all right to deal. He was a pain in the ass is what he was. And he liked to flaunt stuff, you know, and walk around like he was a big shot, which in a sense he was, I guess.
But I want to know what you be willing to be my bodyguard. I said, how much you talking? He said, man, I'll give you a couple $1,000. Just hang with me. Make sure nobody, do anything to me. Thought about it. I said, okay, cool, but when am I supposed to get this money? He pulled out $2,000 and gave it to me.
Pistol case outside the skating rink over there on the east side, because he was an east side guy. He owed me money. I won the case, and that's why I say he was cheap. It was it was a pistol case. He probably owed like $3,000 or something like that. And the damn guy would not pay. And it was always, I'll see you next week. So I typed up a motion to withdraw. He had another case pending. And I typed up a motion to withdraw, and I called the guy in that was from the east side. I said, take this thing. I wasn't filing it. Tape this thing to the walls and the windows, like at the bars, everywhere on the east side, so people can see what a cheapskate Rick is. And the guy went out, and about 2 days later, man, what are you doing? I said, well, shit, you won't come in and bring me the money? And he brought me a leather coat instead.
I had just got out of prison, so I had a lot of anger and tension in me. I was trying to find some way to release it. The best way to release it without going back to prison and so forth was a tough man contest. So I went and fought in that. Coble Hall. Bruiser brought some of his friends down there, which was the Brown brothers.
Best Friends, an ironic name for what the FBI once called the most murderous drug ring in United States history.
I didn't really know much of anything about the Best Friends other than that they were supposed to be a bunch of killers on the east side. I didn't know they were called the Best Friends. I just knew they were some evil-looking guys.
When the fight was over and I stepped out of the ring to go back to the back, Bruiser stepped up and told me that Reggie wanted to meet you, Rockin' Reg. They approached me like, damn, man, we also hear that you're supposed to be working with Maserati Rick.
Suspected of 80-plus murders across multiple states, Best Friends started on Detroit's east side as a murder-for-hire ring run by the four Brown brothers.
I did things for people, for Bruiser, before I met them.
By 1985, the Brown brothers were doing hits on the east side for various dealers.
Rick boy, as long as he got the money, was anybody boys, as long as you got the money to pay us. You ain't got the money to pay us, basically, we would take you out and take over your operation. That's when it started happening that way. But a lot of people didn't want to sell to us. because we had the reputation of killing. Maserati Rick did sell to us. He didn't mind because he assumed that we was all friends now. That's why everybody would see us, they say, oh yeah, those are Maserati Rick boys, because we was basically hanging with him because, hey, he was selling us the drugs cheaper.
I knew them. I represented Reggie Brown twice. Represented him on an assault intent to murder that we won that case. It was in the middle of Eastland. They were looking for the guy. They found him and they started shooting. I think they were shooting in the mall itself, not in the store. But yeah, right in the mall, people were going crazy.
Rockin' Red would get, like I said, he'd get a little drink in him and so forth, and then he wanted to go on a killing binge. We know we in shootouts. We're like, God damn, man. Is there anybody over here you don't want to shoot?
Then I represent him on a homicide case where he killed one person and the other person he thought he killed, but the guy lived.
We consider ourselves hitmen, murderer for hire incorporated. You know, you got the money, we got the gun.
Reggie was driving down the street on the east side. He saw that he'd been looking for Roussel. Reggie Brown started chasing him in the car, jumped out of the car, ran in the house, shot Roussel dead, shot the other guy, thought he was dead, and the guy lived. And I can tell you from experience, not just this case, the hardest case there is when you think you killed somebody and the guy lives and identifies you. So he got convicted and Judge Crockett gave him life. They were just, they were cold guys. I mean, I don't know, it's one of those things where you wonder, I met the father, I met the mother. Father worked in the factory his whole life. Mother was regular, normal citizen.
In December of '86, unknown assailants shot Ezra and Terrence Brown in the head as they sat in a car near the 7th Precinct. Ezra died, but Terrence Book Brown survived by throwing a brick through the precinct's front window to alert the police of the shooting before he collapsed on the sidewalk. A week later, Gregory Ghost Brown is gunned down on Peter Hunt Street, still wearing the suit he'd just worn to his brother's funeral. Having added trained killer Nate Boone Craft to their team of shooters, the surviving Brown brothers, Terrence and Rockin' Reg, decided to exact revenge for their brother's death by taking over the city, one kingpin at a time. First up was their so-called partner, Maserati Rick.
That was his problem. At the apartment, Maserati Rick introduced Boo to his Colombian connect, Mike. I'm watching Boo and I'm saying, oh shit. Basically, I just stayed with him because at that time, Ed was running around trying to find him. Ed had already shot up a white van that looked like Maserati, but it wasn't. It was some white couple that happened to be driving down that street and got shot at. Boo calls me, tells me, man, they just shot Rick on the west side, man. Where the hell was you at? Still rode around the car wash looking. We rode up and down the street. We stopped at the fish shop. We listened to what people saying and so forth. So we went to the hospital and talked to him. But at that time, Boo was pissed off like, hey man, the word on the street that we bitches. That's what you talking about. They shot Rick, man. The word is that we ain't doing nothing to protect him. And Rick talking about don't go after the people. Boo pulls up. He steps over and said, man, what's up? I said, no, what's up on you? He said, man, I thought you was gonna stay away from Rick. I said, no, Rick's still paying me. Man, he can't be paying you laying up in the hospital. And plus, the guy said that as long as we pay his bill, he don't care what happened to Rick. Yeah, the Colombian said as long as somebody pay that bill, he don't care what happened to Rick. I'm like, basically the Colombian is saying that he don't give a fuck if you do something to him then. He said, who you down with? Us or him? I'm down with whoever got the money. And you should know that.
And there was a guy that operated on the east side of Detroit. His name was Maserati Rick. And he was a bad dude, big guy, a big time drug dealer, drove a Maserati. That's why they called him Maserati Rick. And I remember I met him. He agreed to meet with me, which kind of surprised me. And I met him at a Big Boy on the east side of Detroit. And I'm just in there having a cup of coffee with him. And he's actually, it's before cell phones were even prominent, but he had one, as all good significant drug dealers would at that point. And I remember him, I thought he was actually doing business right in front of me, which he probably was. But I remember giving him my card and I said, Rick, I'm gonna tell you, one of these days, a guy like you is gonna need a guy like me. And he said, I don't think so, but If I do, I'll give you a call. Well, 2 days later, he was assassinated and killed. He didn't make the call quick enough.
Officials say 2 men were seen near his room when the shooting was discovered.
Really, we don't have a whole lot of details other than the fact that some people saw 2 men.
Maserati Rick's beef with Big Ed Hansard supposedly was at the heart of his murder, but no one has ever been convicted.
Maz is dead, man. We want you down with us, Boone. We want you down with us. I said, man, I'm down with whoever got the money. He said, okay, that's all I want to hear, baby. Everybody gonna think that that jerk did it, man. So we clean on this. But we gotta go to the funeral though, dude. Make sure, you know, that people know that we there. We still bagging up Maserati in life or death.
A Maserati. All those names were as big as Mike Tyson and Tommy Hearns and so forth. White Boy Rick. I mean, White Boy was legendary.
If not one of the biggest drug dealers in Detroit's history, Richard White Boy Rick Wershey is certainly one of the most well-known.
If Rick Wershey would have been anything other than white, nobody had ever heard of him. The fact of the matter was, it was so novel to the media, to the public, that here was this white kid that was in Detroit and was supposed to be this big, huge kingpin. Well, I mean, he was 17 years old. There's no damn way White Boy Rick, or Rick Wershey, was the biggest drug guy in Detroit at the age of 7. It's ridiculous.
From January 87 to late 87, that whole kind of year, he was it in Detroit in terms of media gangster. And the newspapers followed him. He was eventually charged with possession of 8 kilos of cocaine.
One day we following him, he went to Kathy's house. We sitting there watching him, waiting for him to come back out. And then all of a sudden the car pulled up, 2 guys stepped out. I was like, we checked around, and from what we get, it was the Curry brother that sent somebody to do that. Because he in there screwing one of the Curry brothers' wife.
At the same time, he was walking around with Johnny Curry's wife. Not only the fact that she was attractive, but the fact that she was the mayor's niece.
There was a federal indictment. I represented Johnny before the federal indictment. Again, pistol case. And they had the usual, it was the usual federal case. They had wiretaps, good wiretaps that killed us.
You know, just having her on his arm gave him a lot of weight. It came out in court documents that Mayor Young had actually told Hart to assign an entire security detail to follow Wershey and Volson around on a daily basis, but to in no way make any arrests or stop any criminal activity, but to simply be there in case gunfire was to break out, to go corral and take her away from harm.
Then we followed him from over on, I think it was Hayes Street. He had a spot over there. By the time we pulled up on the side of White Boy Rick at the light at Dickinson and Outer Drive, slid back that door, sprayed him, but the Mac got stuck. Blue was like, man, don't let this motherfucker get away. He took off.
Wershey became linked to the best friends in the media when members showed up at his trial.
Well, we went down there to make sure that he didn't get off. We down there and pretending we his crew.
When he went to trial, this whole entourage of assholes show up, you know, with their pants on backwards. And
their plan was for Wershey to get convicted so the best friends could assassinate him in state prison.
We just wanted to make sure that that boy didn't get out from underneath what he got.
Trial lasts a couple weeks. Jury's out for, I believe, 4 or 5 days. Comes back guilty. Rick gets life in prison without possibility of parole. He had recently just turned 18 years old. His run is over, and his life is over in a lot of ways.
After finding himself in danger from both Rock and Reg and Boone in Michigan State Prison, White Boy Rick called the feds, entered witness protection, and helped initiate a massive police corruption case.
Later on, when he was in prison against Kathy's father, Willie, and Jimmy Harris, who was Mayor Coleman Young's chief of security, indicted for, and Rick helped them build a case for running a protection ring for drug dealers.
And the fact that he's still in jail is obscene. Having nothing to do with, I understand he cooperated, whether he did or he didn't. The fact that that kid is still in jail, these 25 years later, is obscene. Because whatever he was a kid. He was just a kid.
Keeping him locked up somehow is in the public good in their perception because he represents that era.
He knew a lot of information. The contract was on him for $100,000 at that point. I ain't mention no name, but the political figures, they offered half of it to get that boy. We damn near killed every goddamn body there was to be killed. Those that we didn't kill ran and left the state. Those that didn't left the state went to prison. Big James and them was already dead. Curry brothers, Chamber brothers.
October 88. The Chambers brothers are convicted in federal court for running dozens of crack houses across the city, generating millions of dollars a month.
It was all about money, hungry power at that time. Everybody wanted the power.
Also in October of 88, Best Friend's hitman, Nathaniel Boone Craft, is sentenced to a short stint in prison for drug possession.
I go to prison. While I'm in prison, my little brother get killed. I come home to the funeral. People telling me this and telling me that Boo was behind and this and that. Bruiser told me exactly what went down and how. He said, man, Andre went to Boo and got some dope. He was over on 12th and Calvin, selling out that apartment there. Boo brought the dope by. He had told Andre, man, that's a bad idea, man, to keep getting from Boo. I decided to set their ass up with the DEA. So I went to the DEA and told them the situation. Did this, man. This dude was responsible for my little brother's death, and I want to help y'all get him, because I know y'all looking for him. So they prefer to have Boo to let me go for my participation.
Despite working with the DEA, Nate Boone Craft went to do one last hit with the Best Friends.
Well, I had no choice. Either go with them or they would have killed me right then and there. So they shoot him to stop him from going so they could finish the guy in the back. They opened the door of the cab, Luck did, emptied the M16 in his ass. Then, a few seconds later, I felt like somebody was pushing me.
After killing the target and the cab driver, Chuck Wilkes and Lucky shot Boone in an assassination attempt.
That's me getting hit in the back, chest, arm, leg, and so forth. But they say that, oh, it was an accident.
Boone lived but was charged and convicted for second-degree murder in the cab driver's death.
That fucked my deal.
Terrence Boog Brown never made it to the Best Friends trial. He was killed in Atlanta and wrapped in his polo bed sheets by other members of the inner circle of Best Friends on the eve of making a $600,000 cocaine purchase.
Because they felt that, hey, Boo having us knock off everybody in the group. You can't be best friends if you're doing your own friends. And that's what Boo was doing. Boo was knocking off his own people.
Steve Fishman defended Thomas K.O. Carr in the Best Friends trial.
Best Friends got indicted in federal court. I represented Thomas Carr. I mean, everybody, they had about 45 or 50 dead people in this trial. Most dead bodies I've ever had, where they actually charged it and tried to, they only tried to prove, I think, and did prove, because the jury found them guilty of them, maybe 7 or 8. But when you would cross-examine the witnesses, well, that was when so-and-so, Walter Daniels, got killed on Gratiot. Talking about murder was like talking about, you know, your dog ran in front of a car. I mean, it was just, Nathaniel Craft testified in the Best Friends case. He really needed to be on TV in one of those detective or police movies, because he played the role of the tough guy and the big hitman. He scared the shit out of a couple of the lawyers. He claimed he was a hitman for the Best Friends, and he killed this guy or he killed that guy. And he was smart. He's a smart guy. Look, he basically was advertising. If you want someone killed, call me. I mean, that's basically what his testimony was. He got convicted of everything, and then the next thing I heard, he cooperated, and he's out. He got a sentence reduction, and he got Rule 35, they call it. And he cooperated, and I know he's out.
So far, I don't know one that haven't cooperated. That's why they just getting life in prison without parole.
They brought in Charles Wilkes, and he admitted to 15 homicides, 12. And they gave him like a 15-year cop. He's out. Lock your doors and windows. He's out, something. But yeah, it was a murder case. It was a mass murder case is what it was.
If they wouldn't have killed my little brother, none of this would have happened. We'd all still been out there doing our thing. But that brought down Best Friends.
After the Best Friends trial, Boone entered witness protection.
The D got a badass rep, man, you know what I mean? And it's only a few of us out here, man, that now went in, man, and ain't never ratted on nobody, gas.
But they put them in a position where they don't have any choice other than to make deals with people. And I've found over time that very often, guys whose reputation in the street is, they never tell, they all do life, they all walk on nails with no shoes on. They have been, but they don't really tell, they don't come in and testify. They just give information, let's say, about people they don't like or people they're at war with. And It's one of the vagaries of being involved in these kinds of cases.
Sammy the Bull, all the motherfuckers was in there. I was in there with Sammy the Bull, White Boy Red.
How the fuck do you tell the motherfucker and go to jail? Like the motherfuckers who ratted on me. Them dumb bitches was sitting up in jail with me. What was the point of telling?
When I got there, White Boy Rick had signed me in, and next morning I met with him and told him the deal was. I said, man, did this, man. I knew what happened at the state prison. You thought I was coming in to hit you, which was true. But here, I'm not down like that no more. I'm just like you. I'm a snitch, a turncoat, a fink, or whatever people want to call me. But I call it getting back at the niggas that killed my brother.
Detroit. Police there were called in to break up scuffles after tens of thousands of people turned out to apply for grants from the federal government for housing and utilities. As the desperate crowd got larger, some people fainted, others fought.
The city got enough federal money to help 3,500 families pay rent and utilities, but police say 35,000 showed up instead.
This is a travesty. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
And then tempers started to flare.
This is ridiculous. People falling out, fighting, this is crazy.
At least 5 people were hurt in scuffles. Some fainted. More than 100 police officers tried to calm an anxious crowd faced with too much desperation and too few resources.
For the kids that grew up in the aftermath of YBI, best friends and the rest, selling drugs has become just another low-wage job.
Man, I first started at 12, man. You know what I'm saying? I used to skip school, go sit up with them boys, them chamber boys. My auntie boyfriend was messing with them. I remember real vividly, man. I get up, boom, brush my teeth. I hit the door. My grandma think I'm going to school. I'm on my way to the Trizzy. Get to the spot, you know what I'm saying? Lock the doors down. They drop the whoop off. Nothing but nickels in that mud so big, boy, you can cut them boys in half, sell them for 20.
It'll never be another YBI, it'll never be another BMF, it'll never be another nothing, man. All that shit is over with.
The streets is dead, man. These young motherfuckers out here ain't doing nothing, man. You know, we was cashing out for cars. Niggas riding in cars, they paying no song, man.
It's fucked up out here now compared to the way it used to be.
Man, I helped tear this community up, so I helped try to put something back, man. In 2010, we got to keep going forward, man. Take advantage of all our opportunities, man, to make this shit right.
They used to say it takes a village to raise the children. It ain't no village left to raise. You know what I'm saying? They done tore it all down.
I think it's unfair for the society to hold young people as if they are insane.
The drug economy is mainstream in this city. Young kids who are in the dope game are talked about almost like disease vectors. They're talked about almost like you hear people talking about rats. You know, what we need to do is clean our communities of this scourge. I'm Luke Bergman. I'm Director of Research at the City of Detroit Health Department. Most of what I'm involved in has to do in some form or fashion with substance abuse treatment and substance abuse prevention services. It's powerful to watch the impact that alcohol has on them, actually, because very few young black folks in Detroit do hard drugs. You know, the hardest of the hard living that they're doing, I think, is because they are drinking at insane levels and motivated by the fact that they are profoundly depressed. They sort of lose any sense of focus or purpose for the most part whatsoever. They're not engaged in any institution. They're not in high school. They're not in college. They're not employed. They've just become, you know, totally wayward.
Dr. Luke Bergman wrote the book Getting Ghost after working with young drug dealers in Detroit's juvenile detention facility.
That is a book that grew out of the my PhD thesis that I wrote while I was at the University of Michigan, which was about the experiences of young African American drug dealers working in Detroit. And I spent most of that time living on the west side of Detroit, just off of Linwood Avenue, in what's usually called the sort of Dexter-Linwood area. And I was living on a little street called Pingree. You know, it doesn't make sense to move around the Linwood-Dexter area if you don't understand that something catastrophic has happened there.
Rodney was the alias Bergman used for the young Detroiter from the Dexter-Collingwood area that he grew closest to.
And Rodney was kind of this extremely active, extremely charismatic rowdy young kid. He was 17 at that time. You know, his reputation definitely preceded him, which is really saying something, because there's some crazy cats out on Dexter. I would drive them to schools in the morning. I would, you know, tutor them in reading afterwards. And then they would be, you know, chopping up rocks and selling on the front porch steps, you know, after tutoring. The drug that was being sold the most was heroin in paper packs. Certainly it was the drug that was bringing in the most money. And then a lot of weed was being sold. You'd walk in the liquor store and the weed man would say trees when you walked in, et cetera. So it's just sort of like, you know, like being offered a coupon when you're going shopping or something. And there was this Coney Island restaurant on one of the corners, turned into an absolutely blazing heroin spot, probably about $5,000 a day. The only confrontations I would see is when white people would park in the parking lot and try to come into the store, because there was a very clear but also kind of tacit understanding that if you were white and coming onto Dexter to buy dope, you could not get out of your car. You know, you could see the sort of pleasure that young black drug dealers would have in, you know, setting these sorts of rules and constraints on white people.
Man, we had neighborhood people, but our main clientele was the white people. They used to come down in the Shamrock cabs. East McNichols and Strasburg, by the time you get to Strasburg and Finley, you've been and bought everything from prostitution to penny candy, because we had a penny candy store right there on the corner. We were selling dope out of there. Yeah, man, the whole stroll did like $17,000 a day, man.
Everyone is desperate. The people copping are desperate in those areas, and the people selling were desperate. When I would drive down the street, literally in waves, young people coming out of their houses and running down their porch steps, and they would just be woo 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 woo, you know, I mean, and waving stuff for me. You know, if they didn't have money from the drugs that they were selling, for the most part, on their front porch, they didn't have shit.
During the course of Bergman's research, Rodney was suspected in a homicide at the All-Star Strip Club on 8 Mile.
They had a contact in the police department who could get them the crime report for $2,400. So they got $2,400 together, drove it down. It was a sunny afternoon. Drove it down to Beaubien, and got this police report. And within a couple months, he had managed to make about $30,000 selling weed in Jackson, and retained a lawyer. As soon as he had retained this lawyer, he turned himself in. Managed to beat the case in pretrial.
My entire body is covered with scars. My back is bullet holes running all through it. My legs, my thighs. I can't even walk properly without getting cold, my leg locking up on me. My arm is no good. AK-47 went in here and blew out all this. Bone, tore up. We had poles in it. My hands, my fingers, they don't even work. This hand is just here.
Man, fuck the game, man. That was some of the dumbest shit I could have ever got involved in. It's only so many turnouts. Death, penitentiary. You're gonna be on drugs like you're saying. I never thought I would use drugs.
The snowball effect of there not being a real economy in this city that drives kids who are smart and who are leaders and who could have made something of themselves. And by the time they're 19 or 20, they've ruined their life. That's the overriding legacy of the drug culture in the city of Detroit, in my opinion.
Don't let them see you doing that. My brother seen me doing it. He wanted to do it, and he got killed. My nephew the same way.
He at that point had been, was really extracting himself from the dope game, and had bought a space in which he was building a car wash right on Dexter. He was wearing a Kevlar vest the whole time he was working on this space. One day, he finished work, took off his vest, hopped in his car, went up the street to CVS or something to get some beer. Somebody stepped out from a couple of buildings right around Payless shoe store that used to be there, and just filled his car up, you know, with the AK. You know, the corner where he had lived so much of his life, you know, that it also was the corner where he was killed, is, I think, powerful for anybody who knows him.
I'm just hoping that people would take heed and understand that they need to build Detroit, not tear it down anymore. It's been torn down enough from us. Don't follow in us fools' ways of the old time, because now this is the new time. Build this city.
What happens when the American system breaks down, when the politicians and CEOs fail in their decision-making? It's called Detroit. And as the future rolls upon us, remember that Detroit was once the seat of the greatest economic engine the world has ever seen, and now it's just a memory.
Let me go back. In the 70s, they had a McDonald's restaurant, had a little spoon. It was a coffee stirrer, and it had a little indentation. It was a little minor plastic spoon. And it became so famous in Detroit You could dip it into a heroin thing, and they were selling grams of heroin, and they call it a McDonald's spoon. So because of the notoriety that spoon was used in the drug trade, today McDonald's has changed that spoon to a flat spatula.
Because of Detroit.
Because of Detroit.